Um, this is a reading and a poem. The reading is from a book called Player Piano by Kurt Vonnegut, my personal hero. The poem is dedicated to him. I'll read it after the reading, just to give you a little bit of insight into where the reading from the book is coming from. It takes place in a world where everything is basically mechanized, controlled by machines, in a dystopian future. It was written in 1957, so it was very, like all of his work, is very much ahead of his time. This section I'm going to read is spoken by a barber. I think that's all that needs to be said, really. Barbers now, they get a lot of bad promotion on account of cartoons and television comedians, you know? You can't pick up a magazine or turn on the television without you see a joke about a barber cutting somebody. And sure, maybe that's good for a little snicker, maybe, and God knows the world could use a few snickers, but I don't think it's right to hurt somebody to give somebody else a snicker. I mean, all that kind of cancels out and nobody's ahead. And I just wonder if any of these comedians or cartoon people ever stop to think about the thousands of barbers who go from one year to the next with they never ever cut a customer. And still these people go around telling everybody that barbers are slashing so many arteries and veins, you wonder how the sewers can handle it all. But it seems like nobody thinks about maybe what's sacred to somebody anymore. Matter of fact, of course, used to be barbers did bleed people, of course, and got paid for it too. One of the oldest professions on earth, if you stop to think about it, but nobody does. Used to be sort of doctors bleeding people and setting their bones and all. And then the doctors got sore and took over all that stuff and left the barbers haircutting and shaving. Very interesting history, but my father used to say, before he died, of course, that barbers would be here long after the last doctors laid away. And there was a lot in what he said. He was worth listening to. Nowadays, by golly, it takes more time and skill to cut hair and do what the doctors do. If you had syphilis or the clap or scarlet fever or yellow fever or pneumonia or cancer or something, why hell, I could cure you while I was drawing the water for a shampoo. Take the little needle, puncho, squirto, miracle, and give you a clean bill of health along with your change. Any barber could do what a doctor does nowadays, but I'll give you $50 if you can show me a doctor that can cut hair. Now they say barbering isn't a profession, but you take the other professions that got so big for their breeches since the Middle Ages, and look down on barbering. You take medicine, you take the law. It's machinery. Doctor don't use his head and education to figure out what's the matter with you. Machines go over you, measure this, measure that, then he picks out the right miracle stuff, and the only reason he does is on account of the machines tell him what to do. And the lawyers, of course I say it's a pretty good thing what happened to them, because it was a bad thing for them, which couldn't help but be a good thing for everybody else. I didn't say that, my father said it. Those are his words. But the law is the law now, and not a contest between a lot of men paid to grin and lie and yell and finagle for whatever somebody wanted them to grin and lie and yell and finagle about. By golly, the lie detectors know who's lying and who's telling the truth, and those old card machines know how the law runs on whatever the case is about, and they can find out a hell of a sight quicker than you can say habeas corpus, what judges did about cases like that before, and that settles it. No more of this fast footwork. Hell, if I had a lie detector and card machines and all, I could run a law business here and fix you up with a divorce or $1 million damage suit or whatever you needed whatsoever while you were sticking your feet and a dime into that shoe shine machine. Used to be sort of high and mighty, sort of priests, those doctors and lawyers and all, but they're beginning to look more and more like mechanics. Dentists are holding up pretty good, though. They're the exception that proves the rule, I say, and barbering, one of the oldest professions on earth, incidentally, has held up better than all the rest. Machines separated the men from the boys, you might say. The men from the boys. That's what they used to say in the army, Sergeant Elm Wheeler would. Memphis boy. Here we go, boys, he'd say. Here's where we separate the men from the boys. And off we'd go for the next hill, and the medics would follow and separate the dead from the wounded, and then Wheeler would say, here we go, here's where we separate the men from the boys. And that went on till we got separated from our battalion and Wheeler got his head separated from his shoulders. But you know, terrible as that mess was, not just Wheeler, but the whole war, it brought out the greatness in the American people. There's something about war that brings out greatness. I hate to say that, but it's true. Of course, maybe that's because you can get great so quick in a war. Just one damn fool thing for a couple of seconds and you're great. I could be the greatest barber in the world, and maybe I am, but I'd have to prove it with a lifetime of great hair cutting. And then nobody'd notice, just the way peacetime things are, you know? But Elm Wheeler, you couldn't help notice him when he went hog wild after he got a letter from his wife saying she'd had a baby, and he hadn't seen her for 2 years. Why, he read that and ran up to a machine gun nest and shot and hand grenaded everybody, and it's something awful. And then he ran up to another one and mashed all the people there with his rifle butt. And then after he busted that, he started after a mortar replacement with a rock in each hand, and they got him with a shell fragment. You could have paid a surgeon $1,000 and he couldn't have done a nicer job. Well, Elm Wheeler got the Congressional Medal for that, and they laid it in his coffin with him. Just laid it there, couldn't hang it around his neck. And if they did put it on his chest, I expect they had to use solder because he was so full of lead and scrap iron. But he was great, and nobody'd argue about that. But you think he could have been great today in this modern day and age? Elm Wheeler? You know what he'd be today? A reek and wreck, that's all. The war made him, and this life would have killed him. And another nice thing of war, not that anything about war is nice, I guess, is that while it's going on and you're in it, you never worry about doing the right thing. See, up there fighting and all, you couldn't be righter. You could have been a heller at home and made a lot of people unhappy and had been a dumb, mean bastard. But you're king over there, king to everybody, especially to yourself. This, above all, be true to yourself, and you can't be false to anybody else. That's it, in a hole, being shot at, and shooting back. These kids in the Army now, that's just a place to keep them off the street and out of trouble because there isn't anything else to do with them. And the only chance they'll ever get to be anybody is if there's a war. That's the only chance in the world they got of showing anybody they lived and died, and for something, by God. Used to be there was a lot of damn fool things a dumb bastard could do to get to be great, but the machines fixed that. You know, used to be you could go to sea on a big clipper ship or a fishing ship and be a hero in a storm. Or maybe you could be a pioneer and go out west and lead the people and make trails and chase away Indians and all that. Or you could be a cowboy or all kinds of dangerous things and still be a dumb bastard. Now the machines take away all the dangerous jobs, and the dumb bastards just get tucked away in big bunches of prefabs that look like the end game of Monopoly or in barracks, and there's nothing for them to do but sit there and kind of hope for a big fire where maybe they can run into a building in front of everybody and run out with a baby in their arms. Or maybe hope, though they don't say out loud because the last one was so terrible, for another war. Of course, there isn't going to be another one. And, I guess machines have made things a lot better. I'd be a fool to say that they haven't, though there's still plenty who say they haven't, and I can see what they mean. Alright? It does seem like the machines took all the good jobs where man could be true to himself and false to nobody else and left all the silly ones. And I guess I'm just about the end of a race, standing here on my own 2 feet. And I'm lucky barbering held out for as long as it did, long enough to take care of me. And I'm glad I don't have any kids. That way it comes out even, and I don't have to think about this shop not being here for them, about nothing being for them but the Army or the reeks and wrecks probably. Unless an engineer or manager or research man or bureaucrat got at my wife and the kids had their brains instead of mine. But Claire would let one of those jerks at her just about as quick as you could stuff a pound of old margarine up a cat's ass with hot oil. Anyway, I hope they keep those barber machines out of Miami Beach for another 2 years, and then I'll be ready to retire, and the hell with them. The man they had who invented the damn things was on television the other night, and turns out he's a barber himself. Said he kept worrying about someone was going to invent a haircutting machine that'd put him out of business, and then he'd have nightmares about it. And when he'd wake up from them, he'd tell himself all the reasons why they couldn't ever make a machine that'd do the job. You know, all the complicated motions a barber goes through. And then, in his next nightmare, he'd dream of a machine that did one of the jobs, like combing, and he'd see how it worked clear as a bell. And it was just a vicious circle. He dreamed, then he'd tell himself something that the machine couldn't do, then he'd dream of a machine, and he'd see just how a machine could do what he said it couldn't do, and so on until he dreamed up a whole machine that cut hair like nobody's business. And he sold his plans for $100,000 in royalties, and I guess he has to worry about. I don't guess he has to worry about anything anymore. Ever stop to think about what a funny thing the human mind is? And this is the second part. This is something I wrote that clearly will never measure up to the greatness of that man's writing, but it's dedicated to him. It's called God Bless You, Mr. Vonnegut. The little songs of birds, the excessive choice of words, and memories wander through the windows like ghosts. It's always those most beautiful who always hurt the most, and we love to what we tell ourselves was actually true, that you don't remember me the way I remember you, and you remember a life that's completely fiction, and base your religious life on gambling addictions, and you never held a naked lunatic, and you revel like a naked lunatic in your flags and contradictions. God bless you, Mr. Vonnegut. You managed to say what, for the first time, made me feel like I wasn't insane, that there wasn't just a broken machine. instead of my brain. The space-time traveling aliens and Nazis, a pilgrim watching a war movie in reverse, where at the end or the beginning, the creator of the universe will tell you that everything is beautiful and nothing hurts. They say when a mirror opens, a window closes, and that heaven smells like mustard gas and roses. God bless you, Mr. Vonnegut, for the ink that made us feel like maybe we're not alone, and that even a man without a country can find some kind of place to call a home. Your sad beauty and beautiful sadness, your heart like a siren with impeccable madness.